I'm Ella, and this is Ella Podcasts. From your 50s upward, you're usually at the top of your game. You should be regarded as a wealth of knowledge and experience. Someone who's been there, done that, got the strategy. We've been refining our skills since before Wi-Fi was big and can pretty much handle everything, except for ageism. It's there. Suddenly you hit a certain age and are seen as someone who doesn't understand the latest developments in technology, despite successfully transitioning through all of the changes to date in your career. Older workers are often viewed as resistant to change or less productive due to slowing down, losing energy, waiting for retirement. Why is ageism the most ignored form of discrimination? Today I'm joined by Dr. Jonathan Marshall. He's a leading psychologist and a former professor. He's a Stanford and Harvard University graduate, and he offers perspective and practical advice to help people thrive. We also have Simon J. Littlewood, a journalist, business advisor, and Oxford University graduate. He's widely known for his business and economics commentary on the BBC World Service, and he's the author of the business bestseller, Let the Cash Flow. He's a regular contributor to Global Finance in New York and the founder of the business networking group, the Raffles Crew. And we also have Samir Kathari. He's a fund manager for an Italian investment fund and hails from Texas. He's got a Master's of Science from the University of Houston. So let's go to our first question, which is for Jonathan. Why is ageism so deeply embedded in society?
Ageism is a form of discrimination which is quite different from others. It's a discrimination against our future self because many of us will become older. None of us want to be reminded, though, that old age, sickness, and death awaits us. And so there's a natural bias, even a fear against reminders of it, such as old people. So that's part of it. And there's also a sense in which older people are different, be it in terms of culture and the way their minds work. And so there is a difference, and that difference gets extenuated because of that fundamental fear.
And how does the media perpetuate ageism?
In an enormous way. Looking at a database of 1 billion words regarding younger and older people in the media, they found that older people were 6 times more likely to be described negatively compared to younger people, that we have a natural bias against them. We turn them either into doddering, sweet, old, and incompetent, or grumpy and incompetent, that those are typical stereotypes we place on older people in the media.
Yeah, and we are definitely living in a youth-obsessed world. It's always been thrown at us, and you feel like you're not allowed to get old. You have to keep going and looking young. But Simon, you've just celebrated a big birthday.
Yes, I recently had my 69th birthday, which we celebrated with Pan-Galactic Gargle Blasters. I'm just wondering whether I'm doddery and old, or what were the two?
Yeah. Well, I think you get to be the grandmother, the sweet grandmother who's dependent, or the grumpy old grandfather.
I think ageism is very much a political creation, and later on I'm happy to explain why I believe that to be true, because it didn't really exist in culture until the 19th century, when British bureaucrats decided it would be interesting to say that everyone could retire when they were 60 on nice fat pensions. Before then, everyone did what they did until they stopped. Right? From the beginning of humanity. And having started those expectations, they've simply accelerated till we brought a culture. We brought about a culture which has something called the third age, which says there will come a point where you will not do anything anymore and you'll go into that box there, right? I question whether we should ever have done that.
Yeah, so you're saying that by having that sort of a pension at age 60, you're defining people above age 60 as incompetent.
And I don't say incompetent, but you're basically saying that that's what you will do. And what's interesting is whenever, and we're just getting slightly ahead of ourselves, whenever governments try and push back against that because the demographics are terrifying, doing that, you just create a level of expectation. You, in effect engender a situation where everyone's thinking, oh, when I'm 60, I don't have to do anything anymore. And I question, one, it makes no economic sense, which I think is a topic we might want to cover. And the second is, I really question whether it's good for human beings. I mean, you'll know this, but the data on what happens to people after they retire, in terms of alcoholism and bad health outcomes, mental health, loneliness, it's not good.
Well, a lot of people look forward to retiring, so let's not take that away from them.
Well, I don't know what happened to me. I mean, I'm 69. I don't seem to be retired. Is this part of my retirement, or am I?
I think the other issue to think about is where does this come from, right? And I think this also comes from the sort of modern tech industry. in which, once you hit 50, or you're essentially put out to pasture, right? The perception is that older people are not at the forefront of any kind of innovation. They are, Elon said this recently about longevity, that, with Neuralink and with certain technological advances, people could live easily to 100. And even he said, maybe there are a lot of people out there, particularly older people, that don't need to be, they need to make way for younger ideas, younger people, younger ideas, innovation, and that does not come from older people in general, right? It's the status quo. And even, so I think the tech oligarchs have created this atmosphere in which young people need to dominate, and as you get older, you need to get out of the way, right?
I think there's something to that. Like, there are two kinds of intelligences: crystallized intelligence, which is experience, things that you gather over time, and fluid intelligence, which is adaptability. And that peaks around age 20. You don't get brilliant mathematical inventions for people who are older than early 20s. They're kind of, once you're 23, if you haven't come up with a good math theorem, chances are you probably never will.
Well, do we know that for sure? Or is it just the media likes to focus on the young people? Well, it's always like, who's 30 under 30? Who are the top 30 under 30? We don't hear who are the top 60 over 60.
And most successful startups start with founders who are in their early 50s. So that's, it's not the 30-year-old who starts a startup that's likely to be as successful as the guy who's in their late 40s or early 50s. But in terms of fluid intelligence, adaptability, picking up new stuff, there's no question younger people are better. In terms of experience, in terms of potential wisdom, knowledge, guidance, strategy, older people tend to be better because of their experience.
I think it's industry driven as well, right? You're talking about the STEM industry, the STEM academics, or you're talking about tech. But if you look at finance, private equity, for example, it's all people above 50, for example, who are general partners. If you look at oil and gas, so my late father, continued to work all the way into his 70s because, there was, even with technology, there were blueprints from the 70s that no one knew how to actually read. And so they would, they got him out of retirement. They're like, look, we've got mothballed oil rigs that were built in the late 70s that nobody knows how to operate, for example. So I think we are such a tech-driven society now, and social media plays a big part of it. I know I keep saying that, but I mean, it creates that perception that, well, do you really want an old guy, on a social media podcast, for example? But if you look at history, Hitler, Stalin, Nehru, all these guys, they were all in they peaked at their 50s, right? In terms of, genocide or whatever, right? But
I don't think that's a comparable.
but I'm just saying. I mean,
Okay, let me push back against this a little bit, because I think again that this is a very modern notion. So, let's look, for example, at some of the great classics of Western literature. Shall we look at Sophocles, who wrote the Oedipus trilogy? So Oedipus Rex, the man who was condemned by fate to marry his mother, kill his father, one of the great foundation myths of Western culture. He wrote the third part of that trilogy, Oedipus at Tyrannus, which is Oedipus at Colonus, which is a reconciliation play, really, where the terrible things that Oedipus has done and the fights in his family and the death of his daughter are reconciled, and there's kind of a new acceptance of the relationship between man and society and gods. It's an incredibly powerful piece of literature. He was 93 when he wrote it. 93. If you look at Thomas Hardy, most of his great books were written when he was well into his 50s or even in his 60s. Same with Joseph Conrad. So it might be that you do better sums when you're in your 20s. I've got no idea. I'm not interested in doing any. But I do know prominent mathematicians who are in their 60s and 70s.
I think that would be an argument for the idea that you get the skills and then you push them further, as opposed to you're learning entirely new skills.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that, though, because the understanding of the cycle of human life and learning to see things in context is something you can really only acquire with age. So I think there is a very specific value to accessing the thinking of older people. And I think that you see it, there's much more respect for that notion, I find, in Asian societies than in European or American societies. And I lament the loss of respect, because I think there is wisdom in the old. The fact that they don't know how to operate an iPhone, is neither here nor there, really. But that deep knowledge, that respect, that experience is incredibly important. I suppose I'm saying that because I'll be 70 in 11 months, and I don't feel any less able to contribute. I'm prone to judge what I see, the lack of wisdom of younger people, with some concern. When after the Second World War, the British government thought it'd be, the welfare state, everyone had suffered. Let's create a welfare state where you get benefit if you don't work, and everyone gets a guaranteed. This is the first time that everyone had a guaranteed pension. So the average pension was given to men at the age of 65 and women at the age of 60. But when that legislation was passed that men would get a pension at the age of 65, how long were men living on average?
Yeah, their life expectancy. Yeah, that's a good
Their
point.
life expectancy was 62 on average in England. Now, that was influenced by the deaths in the Second World War. But the fact of the matter is, most men didn't expect to earn that pension, and the government did not expect to have to pay it for most men. Now, you fast forward, sorry, I know we're jumping ahead, but you fast forward to now, where men on average are living till their early 80s, and you've got 25 years of pension that you have to fund. And this is the catastrophe that's facing the whole of the West, particularly Western Europe. So I think it's not just a categorical mistake. I think it's a political mistake. And the reason it continues to be a political mistake is because of a lack of political will to actually say, well, when we started this, it was because we expected you all to die in 5 minutes. And now you're living relatively healthy lives for another 25 years. Why would you retire?
Well, I do think there is a time when people do want to relax more, see the world, travel, do their hobbies, whatever it may be. Not everyone wants to work to the grindstone from the day they're born to the day they die. I mean, we've already, we've passed that point in history. And I remember looking at my family tree, and I think it was something like my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather lived to a grand old age of like 89 in a workhouse. And I actually saw that on my family tree, and I cried because I thought that poor guy would have been worked to death for 89 long years, and that would have been the most miserable existence, no doubt. And I feel like people deserve retirement, and this podcast is not about, should people be allowed to retire? It's actually about ageism and feeling the effects of it in the workplace in particular. So, I've said on another podcast that I'm doing a job search now, and for the first time in my life, I'm meeting that resistance, and I know it's age. So I'm constantly being told, oh, you're too senior, oh, you're overqualified. Oh, I even had, we're looking for a 35-year-old. And for the first time, I'm realizing I am in that bucket now. And it's the perception that they think, oh, you're lacking in energy, or you're getting ready to retire. I've got another 20 years to go. I mean, this is ridiculous.
I think this is a generational thing, right? So when my grandfather was in his 50s, I remember my grandmother telling me, oh, your grandfather's really old. You shouldn't tax him in terms of whatever. But I think that was the perception of people, in the 50s and the 60s, right? And now...
And they probably were, in a sense, older. I mean, they had harder lives.
Sure, from a life expectancy standpoint. But, my grandfather retired when he was in his early 50s and lived till he was 78. Right? So, it's I think most people now in their 60s don't want to retire.
Yeah.
We also, on your comment about on travel and everything, travel was a big ticket luxury item, and you could only do that really when you were retired, so to speak, and had a fixed income or whatever. That does not apply anymore. I mean, we all travel. Everyone, my mother's 85 years old, and she makes 4 or 5, big transatlantic, trans-Pacific flights every year, right? So I think people are aging well. People are traveling consistently. The idea of taking a sort of 20-year vacation, I don't think is realistic anymore for people. I think if people can work, they want to work. If they can start a business, they want to start a business. So I think the ageism issue is partly to do also with a lot of cost cutting in industries where they want the 25-year-old, not necessarily because there's a perception of an older person, a 50-year-old can't perform. I think it's a cost benefit issue.
Myself, I'm hiring right now for an executive assistant, and having interviewed a few people, I'm starting to feel an ageism in myself, in that I've interviewed a couple of people who are in their late 50s and 60s, but their knowledge of AI is so poor compared to the few people I've interviewed who are in their early 30s. And I'm like, I want someone who can help me get better with AI. And so it's not that I have any objection to hiring someone who's 60. It's just
that's a very specific requirement.
It's like I need, and right now AI or tech generally is so important for a little company to do well.
But if it was a 60-year-old
who's good at tech,
who's made it a mission to learn everything there is about AI, then you would hire them.
They're in. But it creates a little bias. It's like, this one's.
But that's a tech issue, right?
Yeah.
That's a technology issue. And I think 20 years ago, you still had technology, right? That was more prevalent with younger people. I mean, Trump's chief of staff, I think she's 60. She looks like 90. But, so he's selected. He could have selected one of thousands of
Maybe
people.
Melania selected her.
Oh, gosh. She even walks like decrepit, I don't know why you would hire her, but I'm just saying that even from a political standpoint, there is appreciation of the fact that she probably knows everyone in Congress and in the Senate.
And in politics, you can get away with it. In politics, it's about the only profession where we actually give people credit for being older and wiser, and that's what we look for in leaders. But I think in other industries, that's not the case. And I remember being in a meeting and, frankly, feeling on top of my game, reached that point where been there, done that, got the T-shirt, don't panic about anything. And a young gun in the meeting who was in his late 30s said, anyone over the age of 45 should be retired.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was just it was an ageist comment, and everyone in the room was agreeing. I kept quiet because obviously I'm always pretending to be 26, but eternally 26. But it just showed how everyone seems to think.
I think we've all been in our 20s, 25 or whatever, and seen some old dude and thought to ourselves, God, kill me if I ever end up this old again, right?
Yes.
We've all done this before. The problem is we're that guy now.
Yeah.
We're that guy that, when we were 28 looking at the 60-year-old, we're that 60-year-old now.
I think it is part of our culture. There are institutional obstacles to carry on being. You talk about ageism. I did a panel about a year ago and was surprised to hear that people that came along were experiencing it in their 50s, as I think somebody has already said. So why is that? Well, because the mechanisms that get you employed by the largest corporations actively screen out people over a certain age. HR are effectively the gatekeepers.
Well, it's actually algorithms now in the recruitment software. HR really doesn't manually get involved in it.
Okay, so they've automated
but the algorithms
exclusion.
can filter out people from their CVs.
And governments operate pension schemes which effectively have the same effect. So you've got a pension, it costs more and more and more and more to hire people, which is a problem. That's a structural problem which needs to be addressed. Because if you're a consultant, and I was a consultant for many years, and you're looking at a need to reduce costs because the ship might founder if you don't, the obvious place to go is where the cost is concentrated. And you'll find that 80% of your cost is concentrated in 20% of your employees. It always is. That's a standard Pareto. And they're all going to be the most senior and the oldest employees. So, those are the ones that are going to get cut because it gives you the kind of short-term improvement that you need to please your shareholders. It doesn't make it a good thing. And why aren't we celebrating? I don't really understand this. Going on about the Greeks a little bit here, but there's a bit, at the beginning of Plato's Republic, they asked Socrates, a young fellow like Samir comes up and says, "You're a bit of an old fool, Socrates. You're always going on about this and going on about that. Why aren't you out about town getting drunk and having sex and stuff like that?" And Socrates says, you think you're so clever, but quite frankly, I'm just delighted that I've got to the age where I don't have to bother about any of that nonsense anymore. And I can sit down and talk about philosophy, which is far more important than any of the things that you're doing, young man, okay? Why don't
All
we
this coming from Simon, who's there's no sign of you slowing down.
to slow down to do what exactly? Yes, but I'm lucky. But if I dug ditches I'm not a well digger or an oil rig man, or it would be a problem potentially. I do have, I've got metal in my back and my feet and all of those kind of things, but I write and I broadcast for a living and I run a network. And presumably people can wheel me into meetings in a wheelchair in 20 years' time, provided I can, just say, speak, shut up, speak. Mind you, you're doing that already, aren't you?
What, like Joe Biden, hey?
Well, that's a bit of an extreme case, right? I mean, that guy was like a, basically barely functioning retard.
He was
right?
a leader of the free world. Just have a bit of respect.
Yeah, right. But the other issue that I think we're not discussing is the fact that we are aging better with technology as well, right? So like we just mentioned just now, 60 in the 1950s is different from a 60 today.
Yeah.
Right? There's exercise, there's supplements, there's
Viagra.
There you go, as well, right? There's
The expert,
Excuse me.
And as we move on, one of the projects I'm working on is an AI project, which is the underlying technology for drug discovery and longevity drugs. So they are actually, the conventional wisdom now is that if you can live for the next 5 years, you'll live for 10 more years. If you live 10 more years after that, you live another 10 years. So we are preparing. We should prepare for we have a population collapse going on globally, right? There are very, very few. I think India is the only major country that has a younger demographic. Maybe Indonesia. Everywhere else, it's an
Parts of
aging
Indochina
population.
as well. Yeah.
And the Chinese are in a death spiral, as are the Koreans and the Japanese, right? And most Western European countries. So I think there is a case to be made that we will need to keep the older generation around in the workforce because we won't have a choice. There's just not enough people. At the bottom, at the sort of 20s and 30s, there's just not enough people.
That's not the reason for the high levels of immigration in Western Europe is because our pusillanimous politicians have found it impossible to get people to agree to raising the retirement age. So the only solution that's left to them, if they can't do that, given constant improvements in longevity, is to have massive numbers of immigrants come in, which is exactly what they're doing. Because
but the only problem with that is that 60% of them are on welfare and not going to be working.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a separate podcast on the question of immigration,
sure,
but that's the policy decision that they've taken. And to your point, the Chinese are not ready to do that. They're not ready to open the doors to massive immigration no more than the Japanese.
Well, the Band-Aid for this with a lot of these advanced societies is robotics, right, and AI. So, if you go to, my recent trip to Tokyo, I went to a reception area of a big bank, and there's usually like 7-8 people there as you enter, and now it's done by a robot, by robots, right? So a robot that looks like something out of Doctor Who comes up to you and talks to you and can actually then switch into any language, whether it's English or whatever, and then direct you, check to see where you're supposed to go, and then escort you to the elevator. So, it's scary,
Like
probably
driverless taxis.
Probably does a better job than.
Well,
a regular
Elon's already said
receptionist.
that they're going to have self-driving taxis, right?
In San Francisco, it was amazing.
Yeah, they've already started there.
I think the problems on that are legislation rather than others. I mean, if you may not recall this, but there was a beauty parade held in Singapore for 3 driverless air taxis. And one was actually selected. This was some years ago, and in fact, they decided not to do it in the end. I think it was because it was non-viable. But in essence, it would come to a place near you, and you go up to it, and you get in, and it would fly you to where you wanted to go, which I think would have been kind of fun. So the technology exists to do that. What has that got to do with ageism? I don't know. Are we going to fly all our old people off to some island somewhere? What's that movie where they say you get to live till you're 30 and then
Logan's Run.
Then you get incinerated?
Logan's Run.
Yes. Yeah. Well, maybe we have to go down that road. I don't know.
Well, they killed you then
Yeah.
in that movie. That movie, they killed you when you were 30.
Put your
You don't want to go
energy back
that
into
route.
gene pool.
What are you suggesting?
It's an interesting thing about different countries, how they view it. I mean, in the United States, where there's such a huge emphasis, or not just, maybe Korea and some other places, on plastic surgery. In the US, 37% of college students are using anti-aging creams. Wow, we're so afraid of getting old that even youth are doing these things. But I don't know if that's the same in every country.
Are we afraid of getting
Is
old?
it that, or is it just people want to age better, right?
Oh, there's a lot
Right,
of pressure,
right.
particularly on women.
To look beautiful.
To look
young.
and pretty. And, you still got to look like you did at 25, even though you're now 45 or 65. I mean, it's this pressure to look a certain way. And, I've got a divided group of friends. So some of them now are letting their hair go naturally grey or white, whatever it's meant to be. And then the other half
That's
are
true.
resisting and doing the hair colours.
A lot of women dye their hair.
And, you do see
you dye
that.
your hair, John?
I would love to dye my hair, but I've got a very sensitive scalp.
You do use the same dye, in fact, don't you?
No, I've tried everything. I've got a very sensitive scalp. I'm a
have you?
sensitive
I'm sure
guy.
you
You
have.
know that. You know
Yeah,
that,
so it's whether you want to age gracefully or naturally, or you want to fight it. And I think the majority of people are fighting
I
it.
don't really understand this. I mean, I'm not conscious of wanting to age dramatically, non-dramatically. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a binary thing. Either you're alive or you're dead. If you're alive and you can stand up and walk, you carry on forging in the direction that you want to go. You carry on doing new stuff. I mean, I'm starting 2 new companies. I'm working on a couple of books. I write fairly regularly for columns and stuff like that. Because my brain hasn't really, it's different, but it hasn't gone away. On the contrary, I see, this is by the by, but I've created this persona who's a very grumpy Scotsman from the 19th century who sees 1,000 things every day that he wants to moan about, and I find it very congenial because you get older, you get insights because you've seen things over a longer period of time,
I was talking to an inventor about 2 weeks ago, and he's in his mid to late 50s. And I asked him, how is aging affecting his inventions? And he said, actually, it's really helpful. I was like, how is that possible? Because the research on fluid intelligence. And he said, I don't have as much libido anymore. It means I can actually concentrate on what I'm doing.
really?
That's exactly what Socrates is saying.
Oh, really?
Well, it's the same thing.
Well, I just said, right?
Concentrate on the important
drinking
things.
and the sex.
Yeah.
So if you age better, you can continue to do the drinking and the
we
sex.
talk about inventions. I got invited to go to this networking session. I forget what it's called, but it's a thing where everyone stands up and tells you in 2 minutes what they do, and you can then hook up with them. And there was I didn't really hear anything, but the only interesting thing I heard was there was a young lady, Chinese lady from Singapore, who said that a lot of man's greatest ideas occurred when they were in the littlest room, taking care of nature's needs. So she had a company that designed toilets that were specifically engineered to bring out your creative side, which I thought was an absolutely brilliant idea. I've never heard of that before. See?
Okay, I have no
I
idea.
don't get what you're talking
I'm
about.
lost of words here because I don't know.
What do you mean your creative side in a toilet?
Who does that?
You have a pen and paper there? Or?
It's very binary because people get very upset. I mean, I have a girlfriend who says, I just go in there to and I wipe and I leave. And I say, well, I don't know. I sing, I think,
Really?
Really? I thought that
sorry.
was the shower. I thought that was the shower,
I hate
not
showers.
not
Spend no
not the
time in
shitter.
showers. But okay, yeah, well, there's a
Okay.
book. Okay.
All right, Simon, while you're playing with your rubber duck,
That puts me in a minority, clearly.
No, oxytocin, that's what you're doing. You're you're
So
stimulating a
why
particular...
are we so, why is it so difficult to talk about the decline? Why is this still very taboo?
I think you take. I've had cancer twice. I've got metal here. I broke my neck. I broke my back. I've broken both legs. And the first time I got cancer, they said there was about. I don't know what the chances were. They weren't very good. You either stop or you carry. I don't know how to express this really. Don't let these things get on top of you. If you get through it, you carry on. I could die tomorrow, but I'm not mournful or sad because death is just a part of life. And the other thing I notice, I keep a little file called The Departed, which is a list of my contemporaries who've left us. And many of them are far fitter than I. They are Slim Jims and they go off and they're running and they're cycling and then, they're over. I mean, I'm overweight. I never exercise. I have a terrible diet. And yet here I am sitting here giving you the pleasure of my thoughts. So I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it. I think the thing is to live in the moment. Because you can't necessarily be as physical as you used to be, find other useful things to do. Use your accumulated experience to contribute to others. And I don't accept that the world has moved away from you because you're 69 and that the essential wisdom resides in the minds of youth. I mean, we talked about startups. I mean, I coach startups. Startups are run by megalomaniac idiots for the most part. I mean, they're people that have one disruptive idea, which might or might not be a good idea, but they fundamentally lack the experience to run businesses effectively. 80% of startups collapse because they don't understand how the balance sheet works. They don't understand how growing businesses work. So it might sound like, startups are all done by young people, but those are the same startups that collapse in very large numbers due to a lack of experience. And one of the businesses I'm involved in, which is Salamander, is giving fractional experience to startups from old farts like me who actually know, what it takes to have a successful business.
This goes back to, we do not celebrate older innovators. The press isn't so interested in them. The media doesn't shine the spotlight on them. It's all youth obsessed. Oh, he's only 22 and he's made his first billion. I mean, that's what excites people when they read publication, social media.
I mean, I think that's on the surface. If you look at it, again, it's industry specific, right? So if you're looking at tech, particularly at the working level, you're going to get young people. I mean, every big tech company has a bunch of 50-year-olds at the C-suite level, right? You look at JP Morgan, right? I mean, Jamie Dimon's been there for like a million years, right?
But when you're at the very top,
but all of his senior management are older, right? You may get one or two whippersnappers, but essentially, if you look at Elon's people, they're all older. Private equity, all older. Finance, all older. So I think this is a kind of perception issue. Again, I keep bringing this up. It's because of social media, right? You've got a bunch of young-looking people who are playing this role of whether it's a successful coach in media or whatever, and who happens to be under 30, right? So the perception is, oh yeah, this is a world for young people. But I think in general, outside of that sort of social media and tech world, you're seeing a lot of people in their 50s and 60s. I mean, just look at the political landscape across Western Europe to a certain extent, and the U.S. Most of these people are under 60, right? I mean, or they're above 50, right? Let's say, and they're doing good stuff. I mean, we don't get a political discussion here on what is good stuff, but they're hard charging still at 55, still at 60. Trump's 80, right? So I don't think that outside of sort of the tactical. So we're talking about the tactical sort of perception as it relates to most likely social media, right? But if you go to the strategic route, it's all older people.
But when we look at regular people, regular jobs, we're not looking at the top 5%.
Yeah, but you're looking at the corporate world specifically.
Yeah, but
Startups started by a 60-year-old are 3 times more likely to succeed than a startup
they are.
Yeah, exactly.
by a 30-year-old. But I get your point. Like for the regular person, how is it?
and what can regular people do to stay current?
Are any of you
useful?
regular people? Just so I'm pretty sure.
None of us are
I'm pretty
regular, of
sure
course
I'm
not.
not.
I think
Okay.
I'm regular.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean I'm a lowly HR manager. So
Not so lowly as I recall.
well, I perceive myself as that. So, what can people do to kind of defeat this ageist
Well, we've got to
backlash in the
find,
workplace?
and we've got to find. Some people have hinted at this already, but I looked at data for the panel that I ran on ageism some time ago, and it's believed that the first person to live to 200 is alive. And certainly, The Economist announced over 2 decades ago that the first person to live to 150 is alive. That's because of, as you hinted, it's because there are going to be constant changes in healthcare, which essentially are going to eliminate cancer. They're going to predict, first of all, using genetic modeling, and then eliminate.
Well, obviously, you're not reading about the clot shots and the damage that's done.
Oh no! I mean, I don't
everybody's
take
had
it,
their
but
jab.
But it's happening. You know, people are getting older, aren't they? My mother, bless her, she died 92, about 18 months ago. She got remarried at 84. You know, she said, you know, I'm not getting enough.
Action.
I'm not going to use quite that word. She said, darling, men aren't any good unless they perform. And she promptly married one that was quite a bit younger than her.
Wow.
Poor man, he lost a ton of weight after that.
I'm sure he got fit.
But no, I'm just saying, you just carry on, you know, and Mum was great. I don't need...
Well, there's definitely something to do with attitude and ageism, because my great-grandmother, who was an absolute spitfire, I remember seeing her once, and she died at 105, and she got run over at a zebra crossing, so she didn't even die naturally, which went down as a legendary thing in the family. But I remember her...
Was she jogging across the zebra crossing?
No, I remember her in her 80s doing Meals on Wheels, which was a program in the UK
the charity program.
where you'd go to the old folks and give them a hot meal once a day.
Mum could do cartwheels well into her 70s.
Well, my great-grandmother, she was in her late 80s, and I remember saying to me, oh, those poor old dears, because she did the Meals on Wheels for them. I said, you're 30 years older than them. So I honestly, I looked at her and thought, wow, it's all in your head, isn't it? It's
That actually is a very big predictor of longevity. If you have a positive view about aging, you're likely to live 7.5 years longer.
But that's a choice. Attitudinal things are a choice. I mean, I firmly
want to
believe
hear
that.
more on this, Jonathan.
So cholesterol, exercise, diet don't compare to a positive attitude about aging. If you hold a belief that aging is good, and I want to be older and I look forward to it, you're likely to live 7.5 years longer.
I'm sure that's true.
Which is incredible.
There was a Johnny Carson clip going around where there was an actor called Ken Burns. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
The old guy with the round glasses. And so he's smoking cigars. And so Johnny asks him, he goes, so what cigar is this? It's my 10th cigar today. And so he says to this Burns, this actor, says that, well, what does your doctor say about it? He goes, my doctor's dead.
That's good.
And he was like 96 at the time. And his whole thing was he wakes up, plays bridge, then boozes after that. He has a few martinis. He takes a nap and then starts drinking again. That was his entire routine. And I think he lived to 100, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I think when your number's up, your number's up. I've always had that
There's no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, I've lost a few friends recently, with whom were slightly younger than me. I was in a band with 3 other guys. 2 of them died. The third one's got terminal cancer. So for no reason, I seem to be okay. You know, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
And I think this is why people should, I know it's easy to say, but, you know, stop obsessing. I mean, there's a guy in the US right now who's trying to be as young as his son.
Oh, yeah.
And is taking 1 million supplements. And
stem cell treatment.
Yeah, he's
No.
doing,
He's a tech guy. Sold his company. It'll come to me in a second. Yeah, he's on a lot of the podcasts now.
Yeah, so he's obsessed with being, you know, what, 50-year-old
He wants to live.
man
He wants
in a
to be the
20-year-old
oldest.
body.
He's using his body as essentially a genetic. a sort of a longevity experiment.
Yeah.
But what a miserable life that must be. I mean,
I
there's no joy in it because it's all about, I'm only allowed to eat this. These are my supplements.
To your point about
Early
attitude,
nights.
Yeah.
I find the health obsessive and the fitness obsessive people very tedious, and there are quite a lot of them, especially at my age. You know,
You asked me that question. You were like, "Yeah, you're walking like 5 kilometers a day, and you're going to the gym. Why do you do that?" You're like, "Why do you do that?"
Well, he looks hot for it, doesn't he?
Oh, does he? Yes, I think about
There you
it a
go.
lot.
See,
There you go.
don't get any ideas.
That's interesting.
So do you think it's a good idea for people to try and stay looking younger? Because there's that TV series called Younger, and it's set in New York. And it's about a woman who's in her late 40s, can't get a job, tries and tries, but everyone says, oh, you're too old for this. So she basically starts wearing youthful clothes, does her makeup really zany, and she pretends to be 28 and she gets the job. So the whole TV series is about her having to fake being 20 years younger.
That sounds good.
And, and it does raise that question mark whether you should do what you have to do to stay younger.
And what would that be?
The way you look, you know,
Where you act.
Well, the
dyeing
way
your
you
hair.
it's also how you perceive yourself, right? Goes back to what both these guys were saying is, if you don't feel old, if you perceive yourself as, you know, as young and sharp, you know, the perception of others will be the same, right? So I feel there's a lot of that
There's
to do
something
with
to
it,
that.
right? There's something to that where, and you have a high energy level, whatever. Simon's the oldest here, but I mean, he has an amazingly high energy level, for example.
Yeah.
But what about reading and things like that? Is that correlated with longevity?
Don't know that.
With mental health, for example? Because I mean, you know, in the West, one of the common things now is Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
That people are physically actually okay. I mean, you know, I forget things, but so my observation would be that if you read and you have a big acquaintance and you talk and you're sociable, I think that's very important. That kind of stimulation, you know.
Yes, if you're stretching your mind, stretch your heart, stretch your body, like all of those things are
I'm
important.
not sure about stretching my heart, but
I think emotionally connecting, physically
Oh, I see.
engaging,
In the metaphorical
mentally
sense.
learning, to keep on learning.
Does
Dance,
anyone
for
read
example.
anymore?
Yes.
I thought everyone just watches podcasts like this.
I read 2 books a week.
I've got 2 in my backpack.
Do you?
I read 2 books
I have
a week.
I have a book club, which you're going to come to, right?
Of course.
Yeah, because it's fun. Human beings are infinitely amusing, you know. And one of the nice things about getting old is not just that you get less bothered by chasing women and other things, so you can think of important things. But I think you have a more genial. I mean, it's in my case, I'm prepared to forgive much more than I used to be able to. Do people agree? Do people find that? Because you see so much behaviour and you've made so many mistakes yourself that if you're honest, you know, it's a bit hypocritical to be too exigent. So I look around me and I think that's very funny. I remember that. If I get told off for that, in business. Women are much more hard-hearted than men. I've got a case recently where I had a guy who I discovered was not very honest, and so I expelled him from my network. And then I saw that he was doing very badly, and I decided, should I invite him back? Because he's clearly struggling. And all the girls said, no, absolutely not. You certainly shouldn't.
Was he an old guy?
A little bit younger than me, but he's 60, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is that significant? But
No,
anyway,
it is because I think you know, if you're maybe you get more discount if you're younger. I guess I don't know. Women are hard on all of us. You know that, right?
Well, they encourage to get. Well, God.
So here's a good question.
Yeah.
If you could take a pill which would freeze you at age 30 forever, would you take it?
As opposed to just let yourself get old
Instead
and
of
die.
aging. So everything you know, where you're at in time is your 30-year-old brain and body forever.
This is a trick question. Are you kidding or what?
No, I'm just throwing it in there.
All right.
It's a bit of
I
fun.
wouldn't pause. Yeah.
You
I'd
take it?
I'd take it.
I'd take it. Yeah, I'd take
I'd
it in a
take it in
heartbeat.
a
I'd take
shot.
five pills.
No, I wouldn't take it.
You wouldn't take
No,
it?
I wouldn't take it. No.
So that means you're actually aging gracefully and
Well, I mean, you know,
embracing it.
I've got. You know, I went through a big change about 10 years ago where I kind of everything. It was a big upset in my life, and I had to sort of rethink things somewhat. And as a result of that, I'm enjoying my life very much. So I'd rather be me now than the much younger Simon when I was there. When I was 30, I was saying yes to everything in not a good way. You know, whether it was sexual experience or substances or whatever the hell it was. So I was going around the world like a typhoon. You know, spending money, upsetting people. In a very
You're still
self-centered-
upsetting people, dude.
Only when they deserve to be
Okay.
upset.
All right.
Yeah. So I don't actually feel that particularly. I mean, I don't relish the fact that I limp rather badly, and you know I've got a big tummy and so on. But given the choice, I'd rather be where I am. I'm good. Thank you. Are you going to give these?
Well, you're the only one, aren't you, who won't
that
take that
interesting?
pill?
Yeah.
I won't give you one then. I've got them in my pocket. But
No, I don't want one. I leave that to my kids, you know. Yeah. And the other thing is, we haven't talked about this. One of the many elephants in the room is, you know, it's nice to hang around with younger people, isn't it? I mean, if you're coming up to 70 years old, it's maybe nice to marry a 30-year-old woman. What does that do to your morale and your longevity? Any theories on that? I'm looking at you, Professor.
I don't know the numbers on that one.
There's got to be. There's got to be
There's
data.
an epidemic of that, right, in the U.S., right? All
is
these NFL owners and coaches have 30-year younger partners.
yeah, but it's a certain demographic, isn't it? It's successful guys they've had their first marriage and their kids, and then the second marriage often.
Yeah, but these guys
you
are
know,
in their
someone younger.
70s, right? Like, so.
Yeah, but
It's
let's
not
face
just
it.
men.
Dating.
It's not just men. There are women.
Mick Jagger has like a 30-year age gap.
Yeah, but he's Mick Jagger,
Right. That's right.
and he's also got a lot of money in his bank
That's
account.
right. That's true.
And all the fame and fortune. So there's always a young thing that will get turned on by those things. But,
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think like into being with people who are in a very different generation, I think is generally a good thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think programs that I think KPMG and I forget the other company where they're trying to counter ageism, where they've got reverse mentoring. So younger people are mentoring older people, and they're deliberately putting people from different generations onto the same project as a way of trying to combat ageism.
wow.
I
How would
think
you
it's
feel
quite
about
intelligent.
someone younger mentoring you?
About
Depends.
AI, I'd love it.
Depends on what she looks like.
I think it's, it depends what she looks like.
That's not him, it's him.
Oh, you can mentor me anytime you want.
Well, I run a network called the Raffles Crew, and we about 7 months ago we decided to start offering interns places, and without deliberately doing it, we ended up with 3 women. We had a guy, but he dropped out, and observing. And these were first year of university, last year of school kind of age, so what, 18, 19, 20. The effect on the older members of the Raffles Crew was quite tangible in terms of their evident interest in helping young people, the way that the engagement became more constructive. And we set up not reverse mentoring, but that reverse mentoring kind of happens anyway because they think you're an idiot automatically. Because if when I talked about setting up the website and talked to one of them, she's able to do in sort of 2 hours what I would never be. I might be able to do it in a year if I took a series of courses, but because but she did it. So for morale purposes, it's very important to have young people around, and that's something we've actually lost as a society because. In the old days, when we was hunter-gatherers, there'd have been a whole clan of people of all ages. We'd have been surrounded by children, grandchildren. I think that would have been a good thing.
But there are studies done for the effect of grandchildren on the older parent, right?
Yeah.
Where they actually live longer.
Yeah.
I had the most wonderful time with my grandfather and my grandmother. I enjoyed time with them versus my parents actually, and they enjoyed talking about their lives and history and Hinduism and all of this stuff, and I really miss that. And even in our own family, we've got my mother has grandchildren, but there's not that same connectivity with the younger kids, the grandkids now, and the grandparents because we're all over the place. And there's no real appreciation for their wisdom and their love and their affection or whatever, right? They're just seen as like a pain. Yeah, she's talking about something that I'm not really interested in.
Or I've heard it 5 times before. It's
Right.
the same old story, and people putting parents into homes.
Well, I
and-
do that. I mean, it's repeating yourself. I'm always very careful to ask people, have I told you this story? Because, it's like the 3rd time. So what are the practical things that we should be doing to create it? We all seem to agree that there's ageism.
Well, I think in workplace culture, there does have to be, a culture of acceptance and unfortunately, often you have to ram it down people's throats when you want change. So there'd have to be some sort of program to look at, the aging population in the workplace and what are their achievements, what are their skills, what can you go to them for, what can they mentor younger people.
But from a question goes to you. You were a regional head of HR for a large financial brokerage house. What were you doing anything to bring in older people, or were you were you because
Well,
my sense is that you were probably towing the line.
You're more to blame than any of us.
Yeah, because HR is the one that started all of this.
Not at all. Culture comes from the top. It comes from the leadership, and it filters down.
And I think it comes from everywhere. I think everybody is afraid of older people. Nobody wants them around.
Good God, really?
I think in
Am I going to be
Asia,
able to get home safely?
in Asia, we got a little bit more
Yeah.
palate for them, but I think generally
People are
there's
very sweet to me here.
older people are things you want there, not because they're a bad reminder.
And I do think, I know it sounds a sweeping
You didn't
statement.
answer the question, by the way, but
It's a
okay.
sweeping statement, but the younger people today, I think, have even less respect than we had in our time of the elderly generation or older people at work. I feel it when you're with the young guys. They feel like they know everything. You know, they graduated, they feel like they know everything. They should be instantly made a manager. They should be on the big money. You know, there's no ladder for their career. It's an elevator.
I thought I knew everything. When I
Okay,
was
the
20s, no.
last word on this: younger women, from a romantic perspective, like older men. So there we go. So there is some hope for us. There's some hope for you.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
We don't all have your looks, Samir.
Oh, right.
Assuming I'm
Says the guy
interested.
that's the most popular in the room right now. Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of what is the answer, it has to come from
No, but were you personally trying to convince senior management to take older,
Yes.
more experienced people?
I would, when we had interviews and we had various resumes, I would try and mix it up. But often the heads of the business would say, no, too old. Anyone over 40, I'm sorry, it was, you didn't even get to the first round of interview.
Was it an age thing or was it a comp
It's a
thing?
bias thing. It's
So it's an age thing. It's
Yeah.
not a comp thing.
Well,
it's
Well,
an
probably
age thing.
one is a sort of an easy way of guessing the other.
Right.
Like me with like wanting an assistant who's good at AI, like interviewing enough people age 60 and in their late 50s. I'm learning that people of that demographic are probably not going to be.
but they
so
can be
right.
taught. I mean, it's partly structural, let's be clear, because the older you are, the more you have to be paid. I mean, it's that very simple
Not
fact.
necessarily.
Well, it's pretty much
Not
as it
nowadays. People will take
Yeah.
a pay cut to work.
Yeah, but
And
that's-
actually,
that's-
it's here, people in their 50s and 60s, they reduce salaries.
Yeah. Well, also
So-
CPF gets reduced. I mean, the government is trying to do a little bit.
But it doesn't necessarily work. That's the problem. So it's a massive mindset shift. And I think a lot of it comes down to respecting people with experience and knowledge and all those years of being through things and knowing how to deal with it. And there needs to be a lot more respect.
I never respected people with experience and knowledge, but I suppose they're getting their own back on me now.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's have some last positive thoughts on defeating ageism.
Connecting with younger people.
Really?
I think that's good for the younger people to see that old people aren't just the stereotypes that the media presents, and it helps the older people feel connected to the liveliness that's going on in people younger than them.
Interesting.
No, I think connectedness is really important, and I think given that we accept that people are going to go on living longer and longer and longer, we have to find ways of engaging older people and having them engaged in society at large and in the life of others so that they flourish and they can bring their undoubted experience to the service of others as opposed to being alone, because loneliness is a huge part of that.
Yes.
I think aging better is the key also, which is I agree with both of you in terms of connectivity, but you actually, in order to do that, in order to connect with younger people, you've got to age better. You want to be more active, and that helps the connectivity because you're able to get out and meet people and go for walks or whatever it is that you do, play tennis.
Party, as in your case.
Yeah, yes, and
Galactic
that's
gargle blast.
and then you meet the younger girls that that
Okay,
want to mentor you.
I thought we were headed in that direction.
Yeah, here we go.
Please mentor me.
Well, thank you for joining us today on Ella Podcasts. Ageism is rife, so governments and companies need to do more to protect and nurture older workers, and they'll continue to thrive. They don't bring companies potential, they bring receipts. If you want to hire someone reliable and responsible, try hiring someone in the autumn of their years. And they won't need 6 months to become effective. Experience isn't expensive. Inexperience is. If you want to suggest a topic for our next episode, please join our Facebook group at Ella Podcasts and message us. Please rate and share this podcast and subscribe to our channel. Sending you a big youthful hug.